I tried to give like the explanation, the layman terms explanation of what this big data plus panel rating is. So I'll try and explain it here, and you can fill in for what you understand it to be. From what I understand, Nielsen's range for their sample is like 42,000 homes that they then populate the entire US with based off of those 42,000 homes. So the big data idea is that you have smart TVs, you have these cable set-top boxes, you have some streaming services who are participating. And instead of just 42,000 homes as your sample, now you're looking at 45 million unique identifiers to kind of compare. I don't know if they're comparing or if they're combining, but there's some mechanism where they're taking the panel data and they're taking the big data and they're like looking at it to determine what these ratings are from here on out. And what has happened is a lot of the so the live sports that those ratings are generally going up because they're able to NFL specifically was like, you guys are undercounting us. Like we know that there's more people watching. So that's part of the reason why this is happening. Everything else is pretty close, but for whatever reason, pro wrestling has taken a giant hit. And the explanation, the one that makes sense to me, though this is all anecdotal, like I have no idea, I have no insight into it. And I know Brandon Thurston just wrote a piece and he's actually reached out to Nielsen to try and get their comments on this. But what makes sense to me is historically, as we know, pro wrestling is more popular, or at least in the past had been more popular with lower income homes. And I wonder if the current sample of 42,000 Nielsen homes may lean a little bit closer to the lower income households, which meant that there's a bigger crossover with pro wrestling maybe than some of the other shows. Again, super like guess. It's not even a hypothesis because I don't have any way to really look at it in an educational way with information. But that was the thing that I thought about when we first started seeing these numbers. And I'm sure there will be studies done on it. I'm sure Big Dave and Brandon Thurston are talking to people and trying to figure out what's going on. You study these ratings, you do the columns for the Observer, you have all the data in front of you. Do you have any hunches about why this may be?
Okay, so I think there may be something to what you're talking about in terms of the income levels, but there's also something else that I think is probably more relevant. How many do you know approximately how many homes there are in the US that that this is based on? I want to say it's like 100 million. Does
So
that number sound right?
cable sounds like cable's only in like 60 million homes these days in the
Right, but the
US.
ratings are based on total households. So
Okay.
I think
I-
I think
I'll look
it's
it
a
up.
I think it's around 100 million. So let's just go with the idea that it's 100 million, just because I'm going to do some math here. So
127 million according
okay,
to Google
127
AI.
million. Okay. So and you said there was 42,000 Nielsen homes that were monitored, right?
Yes.
So if we say an AEW show that did 600,000 viewers, that would mean, okay, that number doesn't sound right. Hang on. 42,000 divided by 127 million.
Actually, it looks like it's closer to 133 now.
Okay. Let's just go 130 just to be safe. Times 600,000. Divided by 130 times 600,000. Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. That means 194 homes. are watching AEW. Now, that's a really small sample size out of 42,000 to get to an estimate of 600,000. So the margin of error for something like that, if it's like 10%, if you all of a sudden say, oh, that 194 is actually only 184, that is enough to explain the difference that drops it all the way down to 520,000 or whatever they did
And this
last
has
week.
been the argument historically about
Yeah,
why people don't like Nielsen, is
right.
because of the small sample size.
And when you're talking about small sample sizes, it's so much more open to these kind of variations. Whereas when you're talking about like when this was developed and there was only 3 stations or maybe 10 or something, like, and an average network television show was doing 20 million, the variations didn't mean as much, like in terms of like overall percentages, but now it's like it can mean so much. So the difference between like a 0.1 and a 0.18 could be literally like 2 boxes changing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So that's where, like, I think this obviously this bigger sample size is going to be more accurate, but more accurate doesn't necessarily translate. And it in a way it kind of makes sense, because if you think about it, like you look at how popular it feels like WWE is sometimes, but if you look at, like, if you compare it to like when we were kids and everybody watched, like now it's like it's hard to find people that actually watch wrestling, like outside of our normal
Also,
circles.
though, our circles are older men now and
Mhm.
and families, and what happens is when you get to a certain age, if you're a wrestling fan, more than likely you drop out. So even like
Right.
if our circles are grown-ups, those people have dropped out, though there may be circles of kids where it's kind of the same thing as us when we were younger.
But when we were kids, we watched because our parents watched in a lot of cases, like, because there was only like when I was a kid, there was only a handful of stations. So if you want to watch TV, you're watching whatever your dad watched. Mom's making supper. No, this is traditional. Like, I realize roles are different now. But back then, so mom's making supper, dad's in front of the TV. And if I want to watch TV, I watch what my dad's watching, or I go out and play. I don't have a choice of going on my tablet or going and watching a
Yeah,
different
yeah, my
television.
kids,
Yeah.
my adult kids, they do watch traditional TV because they're watching
Oh.
lots of sports.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
But my younger kids, the 15-year or the now 16-year-olds and the 10-year-old, they almost exclusively watch YouTube. Like
Yeah.
they don't I guess my stepdaughter, she's been watching Wednesday a little bit and some of the K-pop Demon Hunter stuff.
Netflix.
So
Yeah.
that's on Netflix. So it's like Netflix or YouTube for her.
My
So
my
there's no
kids
traditional cable television or any broadcast TV for them.
Yeah, my kids watch a variety of streaming. Like we have subscriptions to all the streaming stuff. So I'm constantly getting like texts and DMs from my kids and what's the code for this? What's the code?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
they
totally.
they just entered their information, and now they're going to send me a message to say, here's your code to activate your television, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
yeah, I at least 4 or 5 times a week I'm getting that. So yeah. But yeah, so it's like I said, I think it's partially probably that thing. Like maybe for some reason the Nielsen's were overrepresented by wrestling fans, whether it was income level or whatever. Like for instance, like I think Nielsen pays for people to do it, and you can opt out if you don't want it. So for a low income person, that money that Nielsen would give you may mean something, and you'd be more inclined to say yes. To whereas if Nielsen offered you $100 to be a Nielsen home, you're like, it's not worth it. But for someone else, that $100 may be a big, big thing for them.
I heard that they now want you to wear what would sort of be like an Apple Watch
Oh,
so that it can track where you go and what's on TV where you are, no matter if you're paying attention to it or not. And I'm guessing that's
wow.
how they get the bars and the airport stuff in
Right.
the
Yeah. That's wow. That's pretty crazy. Like, we know a mutual friend of ours was a Nielsen home for a long time. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about, but and he talked about it all the time, and he is a
Mhm.
wrestling fan. So right there, that was one.
Well,
Uh,
I had a book when for like a week or two when I was a kid somehow we were asked, and it was a literal book that you would have to fill in, and it would have the schedule. And I fibbed the whole thing. Like, I was like, oh, I get what this is. Well, guess what? We watched The Cosby Show in syndication every single day, every episode, even if I didn't watch it. Like, I was just like, oh, this is about ratings. So I'm going to say that, because these are my favorite shows and I want these shows to stay on air. So I'm just going to say that I watched them, even if I didn't.
We had one for radio one time, and we actually filled it in the way we actually listened. And I think I may have had a TV one way back when. They sent us $5. I remember this. It was like $5 and a booklet, and you had to fill in what you watched for that week, and you got to keep the $5. Well, I mean, you're going to keep the $5 anyways, but if you sent it back, they would send you another one and another $5.
I'm sure they were like, okay, nobody watches this much Cosby Show. This kid is like bullshitting us. Or he probably thought it was my parents, but my parents weren't doing anything with it. They just gave it to me and I did it. So,
but the simple math on that math I was talking to you earlier, every household represents just under 3,100 people. So when you're talking about an audience that's, only 500,000, like, that's not that much, and the fluctuation. So we make so much about like, oh, it went from 620,000 to 550,000. Well, that's a difference of 70,000, which is 23 boxes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
What I found, I don't know if you noticed this line in the Observer. I was just reading the Observer today, and the whole article Dave did about ratings. He says, what I believe to be the real number, and he's using the old numbers.
Yeah, he's using the panel.
Yeah. So I found that interesting because he's not buying these new numbers, is what I read from that, which, I mean, these are the numbers that we're going to be using going forward. But,
well, if you're looking for mathematical possible errors, you just immediately look at the wrestling thing and say, okay, until you guys explain this, this looks like an outlier.
Right. Or this is the new normal.
I think you have to accept it for sure.
Yeah.
But
now
if there's no explanation as to why, for someone like Dave, he's going to go, okay, this is an outlier. Sometimes in data, there are outliers. And then, you have to explain for them. And for now, we're not, you have to use them, but I'm not going to believe that this is the true number until they show me how they got to the number.
This show tomorrow, I will tell you right now, I think the number is going to be really low. Like for Dynamite,
I'm sure it will be.
We're probably talking like.
Look, if it goes under 400,
it's gonna be way under 400.
Well, I won't say way under, but if it goes under 400, people are going to lose their minds tomorrow.
They were under 400 last year.
Right. I don't remember anyone really losing their mind last year.
No. Well, they just said, oh, well, it's against NXT. What are you going to do? They did 329.
Yeah, that's bad.
Last year. So I think.
But again, they should be hotter this year, just based on the hardcore fans being way more interested in the program this year versus last year.
Well, I mean, overall, their numbers are very slightly down. They're up in over 50 and they're down in 18 to 49. But that doesn't include Max, which is a whole other issue. So I'm going to tell you.
I did point that out to Dave. I said, well, if these wrestling numbers, if these big data numbers are more truthful than the old panel numbers, then we also have to lower our expectations on how many people are watching on Max.
Or the Max numbers are even more valuable now.
Possibly. I mean, they're valuable for sure.
Yeah, but even more so, like if you're talking like if there is 100,000 people watching every week on Max, that's a much bigger percentage over 400,000 that might be watching on cable as opposed to the 600,000 we thought it was, because that number is only going to increase in the next 5 years.
You would think.
So I'm predicting right now. Like I think they're going to do like 280 and like a 0.06.
We won't know until Thursday, though, because now they're even a day later than they have been. So
people are going to lose their minds when this number comes out.
Yeah.